Welcome to Loop TV. I'm your host, Gene Munster, joined by Andrew Murphy. Our topic today is Apple Virtual Reality Headset. And a quick background here is Mark Gurman. I mean, this guy just feels like he just runs circles around all of us when it comes to breaking product news. He reported that Apple is working on a high-end VR headset for 2022. Price yet to be determined, but they are working on this. And separately, there is some AR learnings functionality, some cameras related to AR. There's a little bit of AR vibe within the report as well. But the foundation of it was virtual reality, which we don't hear a ton about. So I'm going to bring you in, Andrew. When you read Mark's work, what was your first reaction? Specifically, do you think there's some legitimacy to this rumor that Apple's working on a VR headset?
I do. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And this one follows a pattern of Apple rumors that would suggest they are indeed developing a VR headset.
Okay, so they are indeed developing a VR headset, which begs a question that I think a lot of people have been struggling with for the past few years, which is, does VR have a place in the future? And so why does Apple care about VR? I'm going to take the contrarian view here. And isn't VR just going to be kind of a niche? I'm speaking not for myself here, but I think the broader belief that VR is just going to be this niche application. And so why does Apple care about a niche application?
Well, first, I'd agree with that. For a while, VR will continue to be. But long term, as the leading provider of computing devices in the world, Apple's got to be placing multiple bets to be prepared for any multitude of futures in computing. And VR is certainly one of them.
Okay, so they've got to have all of that. I think it reminds me too, that powerful point there that Microsoft and what they did, they were powerful on the PC. They largely ignored mobile. They did not make that bet, and it ended up having about a decade negative impact on the business. So wise move by Apple to be framing in VR as a potential. They've got a bet place there, and they've talked a lot about AR. I want to hold off on the AR conversation right now, but just talk, if we take the bull case on VR, what is the bull case? Why should we care? What ultimately is this going to evolve to that's going to be so powerful that it could be the next mobile?
Well, I think computing today is bound by our screens. And in the future, I don't think it will be. And you mentioned augmented reality. I think that does have a place in the conversation. But with VR, long term, I'm talking 10 plus years, I think that there is a vision of the future that would involve what doesn't feel like a screen. You're in a computing environment where we would be very realistically together having a conversation like this today, or doing Zoom calls, or even
Your
doing
virtual office, perhaps. You're in
exactly.
the office, but you're not in the office. This reminds me of a lot of the things that Facebook's been talking about for a long time. Their reality labs, they've been front and center on VR, and I think that they're going to be a player. Facebook, I'm skeptical about the value of Facebook, but I am a big believer in what their reality labs group is doing. And you talk about that environment, that immersive environment. You talk about screenless, but in fact, with VR, there will be screens. But what you're saying is that will be just so seamless, it won't feel like screens. That is often referred to as the metaverse. And I would love to hear, can you give us a 101 on what the metaverse is?
Whew. A persistent layer of computing and experiences that very much almost runs on but replaces the internet in a way that lets us experience different computing platforms and e-commerce and gaming and work in a way that is virtual and seamless and limitless, really, because of the digital nature, not bound by reality.
When I was in college, Andrew, they had courses 101, 210, 440 or something like that was the highest level. That was a 440, I
Hmm.
think, explanation of the
Sorry.
metaverse. I'm going to stick to the 101 explanation and say it's very similar to Second Life. It's just the real world around you in virtual reality. And do people want to be in that? Is that something when I try VR and have kind of dabbled in the metaverse, it feels like something I get dizzy in. And is that something that the world's going to want longer term?
I think time will tell. Certainly not yet, but maybe if the technology comes around, it may be a way to relieve us of constantly sitting in front of devices and instead trick the brain into feeling like we're not using a device, but virtually
Mhm.
there.
One of my favorite features of VR is the ability to teleport. Harkens back to Star Trek type of imagery here, but the ability to put on some VR goggles, VR headset, and feel like you're in a different place in the world. It's quite remarkable. But to be able to trick the brain, that's what made me think of it. And so I'm right there with you, Andrew. I think that VR is going to be real. We always anchor ourselves in the timing on how long things take. I think this is going to take longer
Mm.
than even probably we believe. But I do think there's just this insatiable appetite for younger people. They are the future, to do more and more in technology. And as much as you don't like VR today, I think it probably means you're old like me, and the world is going to go in the direction of this immersive computing environment. Good that Apple's got at least a project on there. We caution, because Apple's working on something doesn't mean that it necessarily sees the light of day. I want to end, Andrew, with you and comment your just thoughts about augmented reality. You mentioned that earlier, that that's part of this conversation. How should we be thinking about AR versus VR?
Well, certainly, I think it's a bigger opportunity than VR. And it reminds me of the development of the iPhone, which actually started with the iPad, but the phone launched first.
Right?
Uh, so they were developing an iPad. They figured out and launched the iPhone first, and then they launched the iPad. I think VR could be the development of the iPad, right? That comes first and isn't as big an opportunity. But AR is more akin to the iPhone, a much larger opportunity because it's more accessible. It's always in our pocket, it's always in our environment, it's screenless, it's persistent. And I think VR and AR are certainly tied developmentally for Apple, and they've got to be
Sure.
placing bets in both futures of computing. But AR is certainly a bigger opportunity, and Tim Cook's commentary would suggest that he agrees.
Right on. That is a helpful roadmap, a helpful analogy about the roadmap ahead, the iPad versus iPhone, the VR versus AR. As someone who, like you, studies Apple, glad to hear that they're working on both of those initiatives. And we are going to keep you most informed. We'll probably be following Mark Gurman's lead on this here, but we'll be quick to comment. On behalf of Andrew, Gene, and Loop TV, bye for now.